yesterday we mentioned that John Bolton was talking about the plan that we heard first reported early in the Trump administration, presented by Steve Bannon and Erik Prince from nay Blackwater, nay Jay. What do they call it now? Academy. And John Bolton was talking about the idea of privatizing the entire military force that we have in Afghanistan. And I imagine, if I recall correctly, the reporting at the time suggested that the force could be self-sustaining by taking stuff from Afghanistan to pay for its occupation. This is a tried and true model. I'm sure if any of you are familiar with the Roman Empire, for instance.
The Mongols.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot.
Conquistadors.
Yes, of course. There is a lot of I guess, precedent and for this type of work where you have these marauding forces that are being paid. Of course, nobody's going to work free, and but they will toil the land or spoil the land to pay for themselves. And but we heard that from John Bolton on some obscure, what was it, like a C-SPAN thing or something like that?
It was This Week with Martha Raddatz.
Oh, This Week with Martha Raddatz. It almost feels like it's a campaign when you see that, or it could be a one-off, or it could be on Fox and Friends this morning with Erik Prince.
This October will mark 17 years since the beginning of the U.S. military operations in Afghanistan after the 9/11 attacks, a conflict that many experts say is still far from winnable. But our next guest is urging the president to rethink his strategy and replace U.S. military personnel with a smaller group of civilian contractors and special forces operators in the civilian world. So, could this shakeup finally turn a page in America's longest war? Here to discuss is former Navy SEAL and founder of Blackwater USA, Erik Prince. Erik, you're welcome. Good to see you.
Thanks, Brian.
We talked about this about a year and a half ago. The president sent in more troops. And what's the result been?
Today marks the day that the president really took ownership of the war, because today is the day that he announced more money and more troops that the Pentagon asked for. And since then, we've had more loss, more Americans dead, tens of thousands more Afghans dead, and another $62 billion in spending, and it's not working.
Well, he has put in more troops in there. They have changed the rules of engagement. Are you saying it's not as effective?
Not as effective. Even last week, there was 4 simultaneous attacks across the country. They wiped out 350 Afghan security forces, severed the north-south highway. It is a continuous litany of death and failure. What we're encouraging the president to do is to go back to what worked after 9/11, before the big conventional forces rolled in, when you had a few special forces, a few CIA officers, backed by air power, and they decimated the Taliban in a matter of weeks.
But they did not hold territory.
They held a lot of territory.
Wow, I got to tell you something. If you're getting stumped by Kilmeade, then you've got a problem, right? But they did not hold, but they sort of did.
How much are we loving Kilmeade's ongoing, stupid person's version of incisive questions?
What did he eat for breakfast this morning?
But he's been doing that because, Ducey's sort of cynical enough to just be like, all right, go ahead. We wanted militia for it. No problem. Great. But Kilmeade's just like, did it work before? I'm confused.
But this is the thing. He would be going against the troops by endorsing Erik Prince. So he's in
he's in a dilemma. Is there more to this? Let's see.
They did not hold territory.
They held a lot of territory, and there was no sanctuary for the Taliban. All we're saying is, and it's not a privatization, it's really a rationalization. Right now you have 15,000 U.S. troops and 30,000 contractors. By going back to a small footprint that worked, you put mentors, basically special forces veterans that go back as contractors and attach to each Afghan unit. They live with, train with, and fight with. You support them with air power that shows up reliably, which is not the case now.
You're saying our air power doesn't get called in reliably?
Look, even in the last week, there was multiple Afghan units that were surrounded and annihilated, waiting for air power for 3 and 4 days. not getting medevac, not getting resupplied, not getting bombs dropped in the bad guys.
I want you to take a look at an Afghanistan map we put together that shows Taliban-controlled areas as well as government-controlled areas, and it's shaded appropriately. So it looks as though, if you look at some of the red areas, contested territory, Afghan government territory is in the gray, and then you have Taliban-claimed territory in the orange. Does this look like a standoff to you?
It's worse than a standoff. We're spending $62 billion. The Taliban is spending a micro fraction of that, and we're losing. Remember, the 9/11 attacks cost $500,000. We're spending $62 billion. The Taliban is making at least $600 million in illegal drugs and in illegal mining sales. So they have more than enough resources to perpetuate this, to keep the sewer of terrorism going.
You have a lot of skeptics out there. John Bolton is not one of them. He's open to it. Listen.
Yeah, I mean, they're going back.
Do you consider privatizing there?
The bottom line is, I don't think this is that much of a coincidence, right? That Bolton's out there talking about this, that Erik Prince is out there talking about this. There's a real sense that they're trying to sell this, either to the president. I mean, I guess that's why you go on Fox and Friends. But I think there must have also been a sense that this is the time that we can sell it to.